So rejection is part of the human experience, but it's also an important fear that we can overcome. This past year, I was dealing with a long job search, and I eventually read a really great book called Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang. I found much wisdom in this book, so much that I would like to share it with you tonight. While most people run from rejection, including myself, Jing decided to seek rejection 100 times over. Jing dreamed of being an entrepreneur since he was a kid. He finally quit his boring office job and gave himself 6 months to start a successful startup. However, he was soon stopped in his tracks and crushed when an investor decided not to provide the funding that the company really needed. Jing spiraled into self-doubt. And to conquer his fear of rejection, he embarked on a 100 Days of Rejection challenge, in which he purposefully sought out rejection in everyday experiences in order to conquer his fear. And so tonight I'd like to share with you two things. First, I'd like to provide a few highlights from the book. And second of all, I'd like to provide a few of the top reasons why you should consider reading this book. So first of all, some highlights from the book. And these are just a few, as the highlights are really plentiful in the entire book. But Jing breaks down rejection into many different angles. One chapter is how to position for a yes. And he gives several different tactics. One in particular that is helpful is to always give your reasoning when you're asking for a request. Jing did much experimentation, and he has a lot of empirical evidence to back up his conclusions. For example, he offered $5 bills to strangers on an Austin street corner, and surprisingly, most people decided not to take the money from him. But he provided no explanation as to why he was handing you $5. He also visited New York City and decided to ask random strangers to take pictures with him. He explained he was a tourist, and it was really part of the experience to have local New Yorkers in the pictures with him. Everyone agreed to be in his pictures. Through testing things out like this, he came to the conclusion that obviously it's very beneficial to give a reason for your request. It's a little surprising more people didn't take the free money, but it really just drives home the importance of giving a reason. A second highlight is Jing has a chapter on what you should do if you are rejected and you have to take a no. He recommends asking the person why. And this isn't something that he initially started out doing in his rejection experiments, but it's something that he learned that was very helpful. For example, he decided to purchase a rose bush and approach a stranger's house asking if he could plant the rose bush in their yard for free. The stranger said no, and instead of walking away, Jing asked him why. The man explained that his dog would easily dig up the rose bush, but then he suggested that Jing go across the street where his neighbor really loved roses. And so Jing did just that, and he received a yes on planting the rose bush. So knowing the reason behind a yes can not only help the person rejected dissolve the pain that you feel, but it might actually lead you on the course to receive a yes. This may seem like common sense, and it is, but it's something that we often forget. One of my favorite chapters in the book was Jing's take on rethinking rejection. And one of the challenges he did in this chapter was he decided to find a job in one day. That was his challenge. And so, unlike me, Jing did not go the traditional application interview route, but he decided to just show up at office buildings asking if they would let him work. And not surprisingly, he was quickly turned away on his first two stops. But he gave it one last shot And at the third office he approached, the office manager was actually receptive to him. And after a little bit of explaining what he was looking for and why, they agreed to hire him as an assistant office manager for a day. So Jing ended up working that one day, and he even asked the company if they would put his picture up on their website. And they said, sure, why not? So it just goes to show that you never know unless you ask. And there were many lessons from this particular rejection experiment. But I think the most crucial takeaway is that rejection is just one person's opinion. And that can be hard to keep in mind when you're being rejected, but also very crucial. A rejection should never be held as a universal truth or a sole judgment regarding someone's merit. So those are just a few highlights from the book. I think there are many valid reasons to read this book, and I'd like to provide you with my top 3. First of all, after reading this book, I became convinced that it might be a good idea to ask for things, even if you think there's a high chance that you might get rejected. As an attorney, whenever I ask for something, I usually balance the risk and reward. But from Jing's experiments, I do see that you actually don't really know for sure unless you ask. So I think in a lot of situations, it might be good just to go for it. Jing admits that he was surprised by how many yeses he did receive. And I think his most famous rejection attempt was when he asked Krispy Kreme to make donuts that look like the Olympic rings. He expected rejection. They came back and agreed to do it and gave them to him for free. I think a second reason to read this book is that I think it will leave you more inspired about the benefits of rejection. We all know an upside is that rejection has been used by many people as one of their strongest motivators to finally accomplishing their achievements. Jing also talks about the freedom he feels now that he's conquered his fear. He said that by the time he reached the end of his experiment, he was getting more yeses than nos, but also he had conquered his fear. And really that was more than enough. I think a third reason to read this book is that it will add to your negotiation strategies. Whether you're looking for a new job or just negotiating life, there's so many lessons to be learned here. I like how a lot of Jing's requests turned actually into a successful negotiation. He has many successful negotiation tactics that he provides the reader, from acknowledging your doubt when asking for a request to trying to collaborate with the person to make it happen. These are all really helpful lessons that we can apply in our everyday lives. So in closing, I think the best part of this book was the quirky and amusing requests that Jing made throughout. I think it's a great book that can give anyone a real boost of bravery going forward. I think it's refreshing to really dig into fears, and Jing provides an amusing challenge to conquer his. It's a really delightful book, and I would recommend it to anyone. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Bridgett, for your speech, Rejection Proof Yourself. It's a great, catchy title, and I think everyone really enjoyed your speech just based on the reactions in the chat. I think we all have added this onto our read list. So you've done a really well done job in your speech presenting the structure of it. I really liked how you said, first, I'm going to give you some highlights from the book, some reasons why I really enjoyed it. And then you also gave us reasons at the end why you would encourage all of us to read the book. So I thought it was very good, and it was a nice structure to your speech. And it also was a great way to engage the audience as to why we want to listen. Not only, I think personally, each of us were thinking about our rejections, but you gave us a direct reason to do so. Your speech was very clear. It felt very comfortable in the way you were delivering your speech. I think you had a mastery of the material. I really liked that you gave lots of references back to the book and some memorable highlights and stories from the book, as stories are really engaging and interesting. As others noted, gestures on Zoom is really hard, but as a suggestion, you could do gestures. Or one other idea for audience engagement is maybe you could ask some rhetorical questions like, have you ever been rejected from a job or from a partner? And did that dissuade you from doing something, or did it help you grow? And people can raise their hands. That's always a fun way to engage the audience. Or one other idea is you can add pauses and tones or volume to make dramatic points. You did use those in your speech throughout to keep your voice comfortable, and I didn't feel like you were rushed or breathless. But it might be interesting to maybe add drama and flair to the story. It's like, well, the person was on the corner and he handed out $5 to each person and they didn't take it. Give a little bit of drama to the story. It might be a little bit more engaging. But overall, I really liked your speech. You had excellent eye contact, good audience awareness, really interesting topic. I think we all enjoyed it. We'll all add it to our read list. So thanks so much, Bridgett, for presenting. I really enjoyed your speech and looking for more.
All right. Thank you, Tori. And now time for some reports.